Stay back, the commander barked, his voice cutting through the thick, acidic air. The planet of Torvex, 7 was an unrelenting nightmare, its skies marred by a sickly green haze, and its terrain a jagged expanse of obsidian-like rock that jutted out like fangs. Humans weren't supposed to be here. This was a dead zone in the galaxy, a place forsaken by every species with a shred of self-preservation. But Nathan Jarek, the ex-military engineer turned mercenary, didn't believe in backing down, not even when the odds were stacked sky-high against him. A child's cry echoed from the chasm ahead. Not human. High-pitched, almost melodic, and filled with unmistakable terror. Nathan's heart raced as he crouched at the edge of the abyss, his HUD visor scanning the darkness below. The readings made no sense. Seismic activity levels were spiking dangerously, the kind of tremors that could collapse entire sections of the crust. And yet down there something was alive. "I'm telling you, Jarek, it's suicide," hissed Rilith, the sleek, four-armed Xylarian pilot who had reluctantly joined Nathan's crew. She loomed over him, her iridescent eyes narrowing. "That's not our fight. We got the cargo. Let's get out of here before this place blows." "It's a kid, RYL," Nathan growled, his voice low but resolute. "I don't care what species it is. No one gets left behind on my watch." Rilith's mandibles twitched, a sure sign of frustration. "You're human to a fault. You know that? Always charging into disasters you could easily avoid. That thing down there could be bait. Could be a trap. Could be." "I'm not debating this," Nathan snapped, cutting her off. He adjusted the strap on his plasma rifle and glanced at Zoran, the crew's stoic Krillorian mechanic, whose hulking frame loomed in the dim light. "Zoran, any chance our grappling hooks will hold in this terrain?" Zoran tilted his scaled head, his voice a gravelly rumble. "The rocks are unstable. A bad anchor could send you both to the core. But if you're asking whether it's possible..." He paused, as if weighing his words carefully. "Yes. Barely." Nathan nodded, his decision already made. "Good. Then I'm going down." The descent was harrowing. The jagged walls of the chasm felt alive, groaning and shifting with the tremors. Nathan's grappling line whined under the strain, and his gloves sparked against the sharp edges of the rock. Below him, faint bioluminescent veins glowed in the darkness, casting an eerie light. He could see the child now, a small, insectoid alien with delicate, shimmering wings, trapped beneath a slab of obsidian. Its multifaceted eyes blinked rapidly, tears streaming down its chitinous face. "Hang on, kid," Nathan called out, his voice steady despite the chaos. He landed with a thud on the ledge and knelt beside the child. Up close, he could see the intricate patterns on its fragile wings and the way its thorax shuddered with labored breaths. The alien's mandibles clicked weakly, forming faint, trembling words in a language Nathan's translator struggled to decode. Finally, it managed something intelligible. "Please help." Nathan's chest tightened. He activated his exosuit strength enhancers and began lifting the slab. It was heavier than it looked, and the ground beneath him quaked ominously. "You're going to be okay," he murmured, straining against the weight. "Just a little more." Above, Rilith's voice crackled through the comms. "Jarek, seismic readings are off the charts. You've got less than 2 minutes before that entire section collapses. Get out now." "I'm not leaving without the kid," he shouted back, his arms trembling as the slab finally shifted. He pulled the alien child free and cradled it against his chest. The ground buckled violently, and Nathan's heart sank as he saw the grappling line above him snap. "RYL Zoran, we're cut off," he yelled. Dust and debris rained down around him as he looked up at the vanishing exit. "Find another way to pull us out." The child clung to him, its tiny claws digging into his armor. "No leave," it whimpered. Nathan tightened his grip on the alien and muttered, "I won't. I promise." A deafening crack split the air as a massive chunk of the ledge collapsed into the darkness below. There was no way back now. And then, Nathan saw them, shapes emerging from the shadows. Tall, spindly creatures with glowing eyes and razor-sharp appendages. Predators. The child shrieked in terror, and Nathan's blood ran cold. "Stay behind me," he said, raising his plasma rifle. The creatures hissed and advanced, their movements unnervingly fluid. Nathan took aim at the nearest one, his jaw clenched. "All right, you bastards," he growled. "Let's dance." The first shot lit up the darkness like a falling star, its blue streak searing into the lead predator. The creature screeched, its glowing eyes flickering out as it crumpled to the ground. Nathan didn't wait to celebrate. He pivoted, firing again and again, each blast illuminating the horrific scene around him. There were more of them than he'd hoped. At least 10, maybe more, slinking in and out of the shadows, their movements unnervingly synchronized. "RYL Zoran." Nathan barked into the comms as he backpedaled, the alien child clinging desperately to his shoulder. "I've got hostiles. If you don't get me out of here soon, we're done." "Hold tight, Jarek," Rilith's voice crackled back. She sounded strained, panicked. "We're working on something, but the seismic activity is wrecking our equipment." Nathan swore under his breath and fired again, his shots carving a narrow path through the advancing predators. The child on his shoulder trembled violently, its mandibles clicking in a rapid, fearful rhythm. "What are these things, kid?" Nathan muttered as he reloaded his rifle with trembling hands. The child whimpered, its voice soft and shaky. "Krevash. Hunters. They eat everything." "Great," Nathan spat, firing at another Krevash that lunged too close. It exploded in a burst of ichor, its razor appendages twitching as it fell. Just what I needed. Man-eating nightmare bugs. But even as he fought, the odds were growing worse. The ground beneath him groaned, fracturing with every tremor, and the Krevash showed no signs of fear. For every one he took down, another seemed to slither forward from the shadows. His breath came in ragged gasps. "I can't hold them forever," he muttered. His visor's readout blinked angrily, warning him of overheating plasma coils and dwindling ammunition. And then the ledge shifted. The world seemed to tilt as the rock beneath him crumbled further, sending him and the child sliding toward the chasm's edge. Nathan scrambled for footing, one arm clutching the child while the other tried to anchor them with his rifle. "Zoran, RYL, I'm about to lose it here," he shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "I'm here," Zoran's gravelly voice replied. "I've reconfigured the drone. It's risky, but it might. Just do it," Nathan roared. Above him, a faint hum pierced the chaos as one of their repair drones descended into the chasm, carrying a reinforced grappling cable. It wasn't perfect, but it was a lifeline. "Grab on, Yer," Rilith yelled through the comms. Nathan didn't waste time. He slung the rifle across his back, adjusted the child in his arms, and lunged for the cable as it swung near. His fingers closed around it just as another tremor shook the ground, sending more debris plummeting into the abyss. The Krevash hissed angrily, some of them retreating while others leapt after him, their razor limbs slashing at the air. One came dangerously close, its serrated claws nicking the armor on his leg. Nathan gritted his teeth, gripping the cable with one arm and aiming his sidearm with the other. He fired a desperate shot that struck the Krevash in its midsection, sending it spiraling into the darkness below. The drone's winch began pulling him upward, but it was slow, too slow. The remaining predators screeched in fury, scaling the walls in pursuit. "Faster, RYL," Nathan shouted, his voice raw. "They're still coming. We're at max speed." Rilla shot back. "You'll have to fend them off." Nathan's muscles burned as he held on, the child clinging to him with a grip that felt impossibly strong for something so small. "I hope you're worth this," he muttered. The child's trembling voice whispered in his ear. "Thank you, brave human." Nathan paused, momentarily stunned. There was something in the alien's tone, a depth of gratitude, of reverence, that cut through his exhaustion. It wasn't just fear or relief. It was something more. But there was no time to dwell on it. The Krevash were closing in, their glowing eyes like sinister beacons in the dark. "All right," Nathan muttered, his voice grim. "Let's end this." He reached for the grenade on his belt, a high-yield explosive designed for emergencies. This definitely qualified. "Hold tight, kid," he said, pulling the pin. He waited until the Krevash were nearly upon him before hurling it into their midst. The explosion lit up the chasm like a supernova, the shockwave rattling the walls and sending the predators screeching into the void. Nathan held the cable tightly as the blast's force slammed into him, nearly dislodging his grip. When the light faded, the Kree were gone. Nathan let out a shaky breath as the drone finally lifted him out of the chasm. He collapsed on a solid ground, his body trembling with exhaustion. "Remind me," he gasped, looking up at Rilith and Zoran as they rushed to his side, "why I keep signing up for this insanity." Rilith smirked, her mandibles twitching in what passed for amusement. "Because you're an idiot with a hero complex." Nathan chuckled weakly, his gaze shifting to the alien child cradled in his arms. It looked up at him with wide, grateful eyes, its shimmering wings trembling. "Yeah," he murmured, "but maybe it's worth it." The mission wasn't over. Not even close. As Nathan sat on the rocky outcrop catching his breath, the sound of distant rumbling filled the air. It wasn't the natural tremors of the unstable planet. It was something mechanical, something deliberate. Rilith's sharp eyes darted toward the horizon. "They're here," she whispered, her voice laced with dread. Nathan followed her gaze. From the jagged landscape beyond, sleek metallic craft rose like specters, their surfaces glinting ominously in the planet's dim light. The markings on their hulls were unmistakable, the warships of the Kravathi Dominion. "Tell me that's not who I think it is," Nathan groaned, hoisting himself to his feet. Zoran growled deep in his throat. "They must have tracked the distress beacon." Rilith turned to Nathan, her usual cool demeanor replaced with a rare flash of panic. "The Kravathi won't just kill us, Jarek. They'll dissect us, break us apart piece by piece to learn how a human, a Norathi, and a Larithian child ended up together. They'll see it as a betrayal of their dominion." Nathan looked down at the child still clinging to him. Its trembling had returned, and its bioluminescent eyes filled with terror. "Then we don't let them take us," Nathan said, his voice hardening. He turned to Zoran. "How much firepower do we have left?" "Not enough," Zoran admitted, his clawed hands tightening into fists. "A single drone, and our personal weapons aren't going to stop a Kravathi assault team." "Then we improvise." Nathan looked around, his sharp mind piecing together a desperate plan. His gaze landed on the unstable chasm they'd just escaped. The ground was riddled with fractures, the seismic activity ready to send the entire area collapsing with the right nudge. "RYL," Nathan said, "how much explosive do we have left?" Rilith frowned. "Enough for one controlled blast." "What are you thinking?" Nathan pointed to the chasm. "We lure them here. If we time it right, we can send the entire formation down into the abyss before they realize what's happening." Zoran snarled. "And us with it, if you miscalculate." Nathan grinned grimly. "Well, let's not miscalculate." Rilith hesitated, then nodded. "It's insane, but it might work." As the Kravathi craft descended, Nathan, Rilith, and Zoran moved swiftly, setting the explosives along the most unstable sections of the ground. The alien child watched silently, its wide eyes tracking their every move. Nathan crouched beside the child, his voice softer than before. "Listen, kid, when this starts, you stick with me, all right? No matter what happens, I'll get you out of here." The child nodded, its tiny hands gripping his arm. "You are brave, Jarek." Nathan managed a wry smile. "Bravery's just another word for stupidity when you don't have a plan." Rilith's voice crackled in his earpiece. "They're landing. Get ready." The Kravathi soldiers emerged from their ships like wraiths, clad in black armor that absorbed the faint light. Their leader stepped forward, a towering figure with a helmet that glowed faintly red. "Drop your weapons and surrender," the leader commanded, his voice amplified and dripping with menace. Nathan stepped forward, raising his rifle with exaggerated care. "Sure thing," he called out, tossing the weapon to the ground. The Kravathi leader tilted his head. "A human," he said, almost amused. "How quaint. And what's this?" His gaze shifted to the child, who cowered behind Nathan. "A Larithian heir? You've stumbled into something far above your station, human." Nathan shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Yeah, well, I've always been good at stumbling into trouble." The leader stepped closer, his soldiers fanning out. "Surrender now, and I may let you die quickly." Nathan's grin was razor-sharp. "Funny, I was about to make you the same offer." He pressed the detonator. The explosion tore through the ground like a thunderclap, shattering the landscape in a cascade of fire and debris. The chasm yawned wide, swallowing everything in its path: Kravathi soldiers, their ships, and the fractured terrain itself. Nathan grabbed the child and sprinted as the ground crumbled beneath his feet. Rilith and Zorn followed, their alien forms moving with practiced agility. "Move, move, move," Nathan shouted, his lungs burning as he pushed himself to the limit. Behind them, the abyss roared, a maelstrom of collapsing rock and falling ships. They reached the edge of the safe zone just as the final tremor subsided. Nathan collapsed to his knees, the child still clinging to him. Zoran let out a low whistle. "You actually pulled it off." Nathan looked up at the alien child, its bioluminescent eyes wide with awe. "Told you I'd get you out of here," he said, his voice hoarse but steady. Rilith approached, her mandibles twitching in what might have been a smile. "You're insane, Jarek. But you're also the reason we're still alive." Nathan managed a tired laugh. "I'll take that as a compliment." As they prepared to leave the ravaged planet behind, Nathan glanced down at the child one last time. "Why were they after you, kid?" he asked. The child hesitated, then spoke softly. "I am last of my kind. My people all gone." Nathan's expression hardened. He placed a hand on the child's shoulder. "Not anymore. You've got us now." For the first time, the child smiled. A small, fragile thing, but enough to light the dim cabin of their ship. Nathan leaned back in his seat, exhaustion finally catching up to him. Whatever came next, he knew this. He'd risk it all again, without hesitation. Because that's what humans do.